We have listened to the wisdom in an old Russian maxim, and I'm sure you're familiar with it. Mr. General Secretary, though my pronunciation may give you difficulty, the maxim is, doverye no proverye, trust but verify.
Right. Hey, that was pretty good Russian from Ronald Reagan. Mikhail Gorbachev got the joke, dead at the age of 91. Right around that era, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North had been working in the White House. And actually, if you look behind the man with the red tie, that's Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North. This is an impressive picture. One of the guys in the background who is actually running the world. And Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, U.S. Marine Corps retired, joins us once again. Colonel, great to see you, sir. How are you?
Great to be back with you, Greg. I tell you, the color of the hair has changed dramatically since that shot was taken back in the 1980s. But, you know, I've been hearing all day the wonderful line that Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And that is a very important line. But a far more important event occurred a year before that, in October of 1986, at what was called the Reykjavik Summit. In fact, the press, I know you're talking a lot about fake news. Well, the fake news of the day was that the Reykjavik Summit had failed. And that's because Ronald Reagan said, we're going to keep building the Strategic Defense Initiative, and you can't afford to do it. And we know it. And we also knew at the time that Russia was then a dying country, even more so today under Mr. Putin. The demographics of it does not support that there being a Russia 15 years from now. In fact, it didn't support there were going to be a Soviet Union 5 years after this pronouncement was made. And in fact, it all disappeared in 1991. So the Soviet Union dissolved not just because of trust but verify or peace through strength, another one of Ronald Reagan's great lines. It disappeared because Gorbachev could not do what he set out to do. And that was glasnost, perestroika, the idea of openness, that you're going to somehow transform this communist government of a dying country into something other than a dying country. And he couldn't do it. And so, despite his perhaps good intentions, we don't know what his design would have been. But it certainly would not be to be Vladimir Putin's cause, as Putin blames Gorbachev for what ultimately happened, because the Soviet Union dissolved under his watch.
Wow. You've got it all strategically. You understand everything. And Reagan's personal...
I did live through it, Greg.
Exactly. No, but, you know, some folks, they lived through it, and then, you know, it's 40 years ago. I know you from, you know, I've seen it firsthand. You stay on top of it every step of the way, particularly militarily. All right, so Gorbachev, rest in peace. Your new book, by the way, The Giant Awakes, a J. Cruz novel, is out. We want everybody to know that. We'll come back to that in a moment. But a year ago right now, sir, we were losing in Afghanistan because of horrendous planning and execution from the Biden administration. What are your thoughts a year later?
Well, it was a travesty. Having lived through the experience of Saigon in May of 1975, I thought there'd never be such a thing ever again. And this was even worse than Saigon. The end of this war was so horrifically ill-planned, unthought out, and courageously executed by those who were sent to do it. But unfortunately, all the wrong things were done by the administration from the moment they came to office, when the decision was made in July that they were going to abandon Bagram Air Base, that we were going to use a single runway in a downtown airport in a country that's now being governed, or was by then, by the Taliban, which we still aren't calling a terrorist organization. The idea that we could have a runway covered with people trying to cling to a C-17 taking off, and of course, dozens of them falling off as the airplane took off. All of those things were poorly executed because of absolutely abysmal planning. And here's what's happened as a consequence. The giant has awakened, okay? That's China. And the idea that Putin would ever invade Ukraine, particularly in this era of great uncertainty for his own country. Putin was emboldened by the disaster of Afghanistan. And we are today, I saw a talking head say over the weekend, that we're right back to where we were when we first went in 2011, 9/11. In fact, I went in with General Mattis's unit going in the first regular ground forces on my birthday back in 2001. And I look at what's happened since then, and we are worse off today than we were in 2001. We have a much smaller, less capable, far more poorly led than we've ever had before. What we've got is a disaster in the making as a consequence of what happened last year in Afghanistan.
All right, we need some hope, and we're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back. Hopefully, there's a silver lining here. Give us a moment, Colonel.
Give you one.
Thank you,
I'll
sir.
give you one.
Be right back.
This is a dangerous world, that we live at risk, and that this nation is at risk in a dangerous world, and that they ought not to be led to believe, as a consequence of these hearings, that this nation cannot or should not conduct covert operations.
Colonel North, welcome back. You mentioned how abysmal the situation is in Afghanistan, worse than before 9/11.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here?
Well, here's the good news. We can start fixing this if we, the people, you and I, as U.S. Marines, raised our right hands and took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Okay? And it went on from there. That oath wasn't to a prince or a potentate or a political party or a politician or a president. It was to our Constitution. If we remember that between now and November 8th, and we turn out at the polls, we can start fixing this problem, okay? And we've got a big problem. The big problem is there's not enough real leadership in Washington in any department, agency, at the White House, or anywhere else. Quite frankly, it's not sufficient numbers in Congress. And what we need are patriots to show up at the polls and insist on integrity in the office. All the criticism that's coming down on the FBI right now, much of it deserved, but in fact, I know, and you know, a lot of really good FBI agents, brave guys and gals who go out there and they protect our country. And they were the ones that protected my wife and kids when terrorists were sent to our house in Great Falls to kill them, okay? And so Jake Cruz, who is the centerpiece of this book, is a real FBI agent. Actually, he's 4 FBI agents. And as you and I both know in a novel, if you take enough time to carefully change the dates, times, places, names of things, you can call what factual things happen a fiction, okay? That's what this book is. And what you're looking at in this book is the giant awakening. I want to quote to you the actual quote right at the front end of it, because here it is. The giant will awaken, I am warning you well. Napoleon Bonaparte. Okay, in the 1800s, Bonaparte was carefully looking at the global threat to his French Empire. And the reality of it is we don't have Americans in the State Department, the Pentagon, the intelligence agencies looking at what we really need to be doing to protect our country. So this book is a warning call. It's a shout out to people who are brave men like Jake Cruz, the protagonist in this, and Peter Newman, who's been part of all of my novels. Those are the kinds of people we need in high levels of office today. And every time you hear the FBI being used, one of them sent me a coffee cup because I broke mine. The coffee cup that was given to me right after the terrorists came to our house and got arrested, got dragged away, and then freed by a federal judge so that they could still wander around and escape the country. Well, they gave me a coffee mug. I see that the assassins have failed again, sir. Now, that was from an FBI agent who was one of the characters that Jake Cruz is in this book. And I look at those kinds of warning signals that are coming out of this administration, the warning signal of exactly a year ago in Afghanistan, the kinds of hearings that are taking place right now. Look, you and I served together in combat as war correspondents for Fox News Channel, all right? And bravely so. By the way, for those who don't know it, Greg Kelly was actually wounded covering that war. And you never got to go back and fly the AV-8, did you? In the aftermath of covering that war, okay, we showed how good we really were. That part of it was in Iraq. I'd already been to Afghanistan several times by then.
Yeah.
We won Afghanistan, and then we lost it. And we lost it because of, let's call it what it is. It's after hours, piss poor performance and planning on the part of the people in the five-sided wastebasket.
Well,
okay? And then a president who orders, in spite of the advice given, they said, don't give up Bagram. We've got to keep Bagram.
right.
Well, they didn't. And unfortunately, that meant that we were going to lose $84 billion worth of equipment, and the only Americans that were killed from the time of the election, okay, in 2020,
Colonel?
from the time of the election to the evacuation, were the 13 Marines and the Navy corpsmen and the soldier. That was it.
Here's my solution. I want you back in government. I know you tried in 1994. I think anything can happen in politics or elsewhere, possibly an appointed position. I'd love to see it. But Colonel North, let's do this more often. Thank you again, sir.
God bless you. By the way, the Secret Service cannot protect me from Betsy. Semper Fi, Marine.
Mrs. North, Semper Fi indeed. We'll be right back. Thank you.